Stone Ridge Penitentiary was the kind of place where reputations carried more weight than muscle. Men didn't survive there because they were strong. They survived because other men believed they were strong. Every inmate walked with some form of armor. Loud talk, violent tempers, gang colors, or the kind of stare that warned you not to step too close. But the man who entered on a gray Tuesday morning walked with none of it. He came through intake quietly, wrists chained, eyes lowered, stepped steady but unhurried. He didn't look around, didn't react, didn't even shift his shoulders the way new inmates usually did when fear swallowed them whole. He just breathed, slow, calm, controlled, as if the world around him had dimmed to silence. His intake sheet read, Isaiah Cole, age 36, sentence, indefinite. No one knew what indefinite meant in a place where sentences were the loudest part of a man's story. Officer Hernandez flipped the page twice, then looked up at him. "You gonna say something, Cole?" Isaiah didn't lift his head. Hernandez frowned. "Suit yourself." He walked Isaiah down the long hallway toward Block B. The air grew heavier, voices louder, the scent of sweat and aggression rising like heat off asphalt. Cells clanged open and shut. Inmates shouted names, threats, curses. Nothing reached Isaiah. He walked with the detached calm of a man who'd already made peace with something no one else understood. When they reached cell 214, Hernandez unlocked it and motioned inside. Isaiah stepped in, placed his folded jumpsuit on the bed without a word, and sat down with the posture of someone trying to disappear into space itself. Hernandez shook his head. "You one of those monks or some crap? Silent ain't gonna help you here, man." Still no response. The officer locked the door and walked away muttering, "Dead man walking." But he wasn't dead. He wasn't weak. He wasn't scared. He was patient. By afternoon, the noise in Block B reached its usual frenzy. Cards slapped metal tables. Men argued over bench press time. Trash talk bounced off concrete. Every gang had its corner carved out like a kingdom. And at the center of it all sat the man who ran Block B, Marcus Kane, leader of the Iron Serpents. Marcus wasn't the biggest man in the block, but he was the one men feared. Tattoos crawled up his neck like coiled snakes. Scars lined his fists from years of proving he was the wrong man to test. He'd broken jaws, ribs, spirits. He'd earned his leadership through the simplest law of prison: be the most dangerous man in every room. So when he heard someone mention a silent new fish, his interest sharpened. Marcus flicked his card down and leaned back. "Silent." "Yeah," one of his men said. "Dude ain't said a word since intake. Just sits there." "Sits where?" "Cell 214. Marcus's grin widened. "Right across from us." He stood, cracking his neck, and began walking with his wolves behind him, two thick-bodied, cold-eyed men who lived off Marcus's shadow. As he approached, inmates moved out of the way. Marcus didn't walk around people. People moved. When he reached Isaiah's cell, he leaned against the bars with a lazy smirk. "Hey, new guy." Isaiah didn't respond. Marcus nodded slowly, amused. "So you're the mute everyone's whispering about." Silence. "You a runner? You scared? You think staying quiet keeps you invisible?" Isaiah's eyes remained on the floor. Marcus chuckled. "Nah, I like this. Reminds me of the last guy who tried it. Didn't last long." He motioned, and his men opened Isaiah's cell. Marcus walked in uninvited and stood in front of Isaiah, towering over him. "You hear me talking to you?" Marcus asked. Still nothing. No flinch. No shift. No breath out of rhythm. Isaiah sat the same way he had all morning. Calm, still, almost meditative. It annoyed Marcus. It intrigued him. It made him lean in closer. "You disrespected me, mute boy." Nothing. Marcus reached out with one finger and flicked Isaiah's forehead. A small, childish gesture meant to humiliate. Isaiah didn't react. The block quieted. Men watched. Marcus flicked him again, this time harder. Then he grabbed Isaiah's shirt and pulled him forward slightly. "Talk," Marcus said, voice low and dangerous. "Say one word." Again, no reaction. Marcus laughed softly, shaking his head. "All right, tough guy. We'll break you in slow." He shoved Isaiah back onto the bunk and stepped out of the cell. "Tomorrow," he told his crew, "we make him scream." The cell door slammed shut. But as Marcus walked away, something strange happened. He paused mid-step and turned back, eyes narrowing. He hadn't noticed it before. Isaiah's left sleeve had slid up slightly in the shove. A black marking peeked from under fabric. Small, geometric, clean, with sharp edges that formed a pattern Marcus couldn't place. A tattoo, not prison style, not gang style. Something else. Something Marcus had only seen once, in a file he wasn't supposed to open. He stared at the design, pulse quickening, because the last time he saw that symbol, a man went missing. 3 others ended up in body bags, and no one ever found the one responsible. Marcus looked at Isaiah again, but Isaiah calmly rolled his sleeve back down without meeting his eyes. For the first time in years, Marcus felt something he didn't understand. Not anger, not dominance, a flicker of fear. He turned away quickly, hiding the tremor in his hand. Isaiah exhaled quietly. Not tired, not scared, just done hiding. Marcus Kane hardly slept that night. He lay in his bunk staring at the cracked ceiling, replaying the moment over and over. The silent man with the lowered eyes, the calm breathing, the unbothered stillness, and that symbol. That tattoo. He knew he'd seen it before, years ago, on a night he tried hard to forget. A symbol drawn on a surveillance photo. A symbol tied to a massacre that never made headlines. A name whispered in the underworld, like a ghost story criminals told each other just to feel alive. But it couldn't be him. It couldn't be that man. Could it? Marcus turned on his side, restless. No, impossible. Men like that didn't end up in prison cells. They didn't get caught. They didn't make mistakes. Still, the image wouldn't leave his mind. Geometric, sharp edge, perfectly inked. A mark used only by a group. So secret most gangs didn't even believe they existed. The Vipers. Elite contract killers. Ghosts with fingerprints burned off and files redacted to black. Rumors that one of their former enforcers, one of the deadliest, went dark years ago. Disappeared. Some said he died. Some said he retired. Some said he changed identities and vanished. Marcus had laughed when he heard that story the first time. Tonight, he didn't laugh. Morning came too fast. The block buzzed like a disturbed hornet nest. Everyone sensed tension rippling under the surface. Inmates whispered about how Marcus was going to break the mute today, but Marcus walked slower than usual. He wasn't pumped for a show. He wasn't grinning. He scanned the room every few seconds, mind racing. His 2 lieutenants, Roach and Ledger, nudged him. "You good, boss?" "Yeah," Marcus muttered. "Just thinking." Roach laughed. "Thinking? That's new." Marcus didn't smile. They headed into the cafeteria. Breakfast lines were long. Trays clattered. Voices rose and fell. At the far corner, exactly where the quietest men sat, was Isaiah. He ate alone, back straight, eyes low, the same stillness, the same calm, the same silence. Marcus approached the table, pushing his tray toward Isaiah's, expecting him to flinch, look up, move, something. Isaiah didn't move at all. Roach cracked his knuckles. "Yo, mute boy, boss is talking to you." Nothing. Marcus pulled back the chair across from Isaiah and sat down, slowly, carefully, more cautious than he'd ever shown in public. Ledger frowned, confused. "We doing this or what?" Marcus didn't answer him. He stared at Isaiah with a mix of curiosity and fear he did his best to hide. "You know," Marcus said quietly, "I checked your file this morning." No reaction. No tattoos listed. Marcus continued. "Funny, right? Because I saw something last night." Isaiah didn't look up. Marcus leaned in, voice low, lift the sleeve. No movement. Ledger scowled. "He ain't listening, bro." "Let me?" Marcus snapped. "Shut up." Roach blinked in surprise. Marcus never spoke to his own men like that. Isaiah continued chewing, slow and steady. Marcus's patience finally broke. He reached across the table, grabbed Isaiah's wrist, and yanked the sleeve up. And there it was, clearer in daylight, sharper, unmistakable. The black geometric tattoo. lines forming a symbol only a handful of criminals had ever seen in person. Roach squinted. What the hell is that? Some math problem? Marcus's throat tightened. Not a math problem, he whispered. A mark. Ledger leaned closer. Mark of what? Marcus swallowed hard. Death. Roach laughed loudly. Man, stop scaring yourself. Look at him. Dude looks homeless, not dangerous. Isaiah slowly turned his wrist, gently pulling from Marcus's grip. No aggression, no tension, just control. Then he lifted his eyes. For the first time since entering Stone Ridge, Isaiah looked directly into Marcus Kane's face. Not with anger, not with fear, just a cold, quiet recognition, as if he knew Marcus, as if he'd seen him before. Marcus felt a shiver run from his spine down to the bone. He stood up too quickly, bumping the table. His tray clattered onto the floor. Every inmate looked up. The gang leader blocked, but he didn't lose balance. He didn't stumble. He didn't back away. But he just had. Roach stared. Boss, what's wrong with you? Marcus didn't answer. He forced his breathing steady. You, Marcus said, voice unsteady, are going to tell me who you are. Isaiah blinked once, then shook his head. Just once. Not in defiance. In warning. Marcus's pulse raced. You listen to me. This is my block. You don't get to walk around with marks you can't explain. I'll find out what crew you run with. I'll find out who you killed. And Isaiah moved. Not fast. Not aggressively. Just enough to place his fingertips gently on Marcus's hand. Marcus froze instantly, because no one touched him like that. No one dared. Roach reached for a shank. Ledger grabbed Isaiah's shoulder. And both men stopped halfway, as if something instinctual warned them not to continue. Isaiah removed his hand and stood. Marcus backed up, without meaning to. Isaiah leaned just slightly toward him and whispered the first words anyone had heard him speak. Don't dig where you can't bury. Marcus's lungs stopped working. Roach's mouth dropped open. He talked. Isaiah lowered his sleeve, turned, and walked away with the same silent calm. Marcus stood rooted to the floor, sweat forming on his temple. Boss, Ledger muttered. What did he mean by that? Marcus stared at Isaiah's back like he was watching a ghost walk out of a grave. I think, Marcus whispered, voice cracking, I know who he is. Roach frowned. Then who? Marcus shook his head, terrified to even say it. Someone who shouldn't exist anymore. And for the first time since he became the most feared man in Stone Ridge Penitentiary, Marcus Kane felt truly unsafe. Marcus Kane didn't return to his gang table after breakfast. He didn't joke around. He didn't threaten anyone. He didn't even finish his meal. Instead, he paced along the far wall of the cafeteria like a man standing at the edge of a cliff, peering into a depth he didn't want to fall into. His crew watched him with growing confusion. Marcus never paced. He was a storm, not the man who feared it. Roach finally stepped forward. Boss, are you going to explain what's going on? That mute dude ain't. Marcus cut him off with a raised hand. Don't call him that. Roach blinked. Huh. Marcus spoke quietly. Don't call him mute. Don't call him weak. Don't call him anything. Ledger frowned. Why? You scared him now. Marcus didn't answer. He couldn't, because the truth wasn't something Roach or Ledger could handle. It barely made sense to him. Marcus took a breath and whispered, Stay away from him. Both of you. Don't look at him. Don't talk to him. Don't touch him. Nothing. Roach scoffed. Bro, you realize how stupid you sound. Marcus spun around so fast Roach stepped back. Do you know what that tattoo is? Some lines. Roach shrugged. Looks like a barcode had a seizure. Marcus didn't laugh. It's a sigil, a marker, a symbol that belongs to one group. A group the serpents don't ever cross. Ledger raised an eyebrow. And what group's that? Marcus swallowed. He didn't want to say the name. Even whispering it felt like an invitation for something to appear. Vipers, Marcus finally said. He has the mark of the Vipers. Roach squinted. Vipers? Like the crew from Philly? No, Marcus snapped. Not a street crew. Not a gang. A unit? Ledger shook his head. Never heard of them. You weren't supposed to, Marcus said quietly. No one was. Roach laughed. So what? Dude's got a tattoo from some ghost squad. That doesn't make him. Marcus slammed his fist on a metal table, the entire row going silent. It makes him untouchable. Even Roach shut up. Marcus ran a hand over his face. Years ago, before I got locked up, I used a run collection from Marlowe. Big time trafficker. Guy had clients all over the East Coast. One day, he got paranoid about a contract killer someone claimed was coming for him. He told me to check out a list of names. One of those names had a mark next to it. Same symbol I saw on Cole's wrist. Roach crossed his arms. And Marlowe told me, Marcus whispered, if I ever saw that symbol in real life, I was to run. Ledger frowned. You? He told you to run. Marcus nodded slowly. He said men with that mark don't make threats. They don't show off. They don't talk. They don't fight loud. They kill, disappear, and no one ever find the bodies. Roach rolled his eyes. Come on, boss. That's bedtime story stuff. Marcus shook his head. No, because 1 month later, Marlowe disappeared. No struggle. No bullets. No blood. Whole house left like he stepped out for groceries. He looked Roach and Ledger dead in the eyes. And that same symbol was burned into his living room floor. The room fell silent. Even the guards pacing the cafeteria didn't seem loud enough to break it. Roach's voice softened. Boss, you serious right now? Marcus nodded, expression grim. Dead serious. Ledger swallowed. So what you're saying is, this silent prisoner, he's one of them? Marcus looked toward Isaiah across the room, sitting alone, eating slowly, head lowered like always. I don't know, Marcus whispered, but I'm not testing it. Later in the day, Marcus made a decision that shocked even himself. He asked to see the prison archives. Officer Simmons raised a brow. Since when do you care about paperwork? Marcus forced a steady breath. Just want to see who the new guy really is. Not allowed, Simmons said. You know that. Marcus leaned in. Come on, man. I'm not going to do anything. I just need to make sure he ain't some psycho. Officer Simmons sighed, but Marcus was not the kind of inmate you ignored lightly. He checked the archive room. Empty. Fine. 5 minutes, Simmons said. You touch nothing. You copy nothing. You steal nothing. You read. That's it. Marcus nodded. Simmons unlocked the door. Marcus closed it behind him. The archive room was cold, filled with old files, rusted cabinets, and dust thick enough to choke a rat. He found a new intake drawer, flipped through until he saw Cole, Isaiah, file 11843. Marcus pulled it out. Thin file. Too thin. No history. No address. No next of kin. No employment. No background. No incidents. Just one note. Transferred. No prior data. Hold until review. Marcus felt his stomach twist. No prior data? Every inmate has prior data. He flipped again. A photo clipped to the back. Isaiah. Younger. Clean-shaven. Eyes exactly the same. But something else caught Marcus's attention. Behind Isaiah, in the blurred background of the intake photo, was a wall with markings. Black geometric shapes. The same shapes on Isaiah's wrist. Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. He dropped the file and stepped back like it had burned him. This wasn't a random inmate. This wasn't a ghost story. This was a man whose identity had been erased on purpose. Marcus grabbed the file again, pages shaking in his hands. Then he saw it. A single line, handwritten in red ink. Do not engage. If confronted, de-escalate immediately. Do not speak his name. Marcus froze completely. His heartbeat thundered. Do not speak his name? Do not engage? What kind of inmate had warnings like that? He quickly stuffed the file back, slammed the drawer shut, and stumbled out of the archive room before Simmons suspected anything. When Marcus stepped back into Block B, Roach and Ledger approached him. So, Roach asked, what did you find? Marcus didn't speak at first. He stared at his men with a seriousness they'd never seen. Then he said, voice barely above a whisper. We leave him alone. Roach frowned. Why? Because, Marcus said, if we don't. He looked toward Isaiah's cell. We won't make it out of this place alive. Marcus Kane didn't sleep that night either. He lay awake, replaying every rumor he'd ever heard about the Vipers. Stories whispered in back alleys by men who'd survived gunshots but couldn't survive silence. He remembered the one trafficker who swore a Viper had walked into his club, sat down at the bar, said nothing, and walked out. The next morning, 4 bodies were found in an abandoned warehouse with no bullet wounds, no knife marks, nothing, as if they had simply dropped dead. That story made Marcus laugh when he first heard it. Tonight, he wished he never had, because Isaiah Cole sat on his bunk across the block, still as stone, eyes half closed, breathing even, like a man waiting. By morning, tension crackled through Block B. Nobody joked. Nobody argued. Even the guard sensed something in the air, like static before rainfall. Roach and Ledger approached Marcus cautiously. You gonna tell us what the file said? Roach asked. Marcus shook his head. No. Why not? Ledger pressed. Because if you know, Marcus said, voice flat as concrete, you'll start asking questions. So, Roach shrugged. Marcus leaned in, eyes burning. And men who ask questions about the Vipers don't survive long enough to find answers. Both men stiffened. Roach forced a laugh. Boss, come on. You acting like this guy ain't human. Marcus didn't respond. Right, Roach repeated. Right, boss? Marcus didn't nod, didn't shake his head, didn't blink. Ledger swallowed. Okay, he murmured. That's not reassuring. Marcus walked away. The first sign something was wrong happened during yard time. All inmates were outside. Weights clanged. Guards patrolled with lazy steps. The sky was a flat gray, heavy with moisture. The yard felt smaller than usual, like the walls were inching inward. Isaiah walked alone along the far edge of the yard, hand behind his back, head slightly lowered as if counting his steps. He didn't look at anyone, didn't react to anything. Even when a basketball bounced near him, he didn't shift. He moved like he didn't exist in the same world as everyone else. But one man noticed him too much. A man who didn't follow Marcus's orders. Cliff, a loudmouth, a bully, a man who thought fear was a handshake. Cliff wasn't smart, but he was ambitious. And the rumor of a silent freak with a mystery tattoo made him curious, excited even. He thought maybe messing with Isaiah would earn him Marcus's respect. Cliff strutted toward Isaiah like a rooster crossing a field, chest puffed, jaw swinging side to side. Marcus saw it too late. Cliff, he hissed. Stop. Cliff ignored him. Roach cursed. Ah, hell, idiot's gonna get himself killed. Ledger whispered, Boss, say something. Marcus locked eyes with Isaiah across the yard. Isaiah didn't even blink. That scared Marcus more than Cliff's stupidity. Cliff. Marcus barked. Walk away. Cliff grinned. Nah, boss. I got this. He stepped in front of Isaiah. Yo, Cliff said, blocking the path. You gonna talk today? Or you gonna sit there like you're meditating your ass to death? Isaiah kept walking. Cliff shoved him lightly in the chest. I said talk. Isaiah took one step back to steady himself, then lifted his gaze, slowly, until his eyes met Cliff's. Something about Isaiah's eyes made Cliff's breath hitch. Not anger, not fear, not even annoyance. Just an emotion Cliff never expected to see. Recognition. As if Isaiah had already met Cliff. As if Isaiah had already decided something. Cliff swallowed but forced confidence. Yeah, that's right. Look at me. Isaiah spoke quietly, almost gently. You shouldn't have done that. Cliff blinked. What? Isaiah repeated, voice still soft. You shouldn't have touched me. Before Cliff could laugh, the yard lights flickered. All at once. Every bulb. The guards looked around nervously. Inmates glanced at each other. Isaiah stepped past Cliff and whispered, 3 seconds. Cliff frowned. 3 seconds or what? Then Isaiah said a number under his breath. 1. Cliff felt something behind him. A shadow. A shift of air. 2. Marcus's face drained of blood. He knew what was happening. He had seen men die with the same countdown. 3. Cliff turned around and froze. Security Officer Grant, the one guard everyone knew was corrupt, violent, and greedy, stood directly behind him with a shiv pressed against Cliff's neck. Except Cliff hadn't provoked Grant. Grant hadn't walked toward Cliff. No one saw how Grant got there. No one saw the shiv appear. It was like he had been placed there. Only one man had moved. Isaiah. Marcus felt his skin crawl. No, no, no. Grant's eyes were wide and unfocused, as if he wasn't in control of his body. Cliff stammered. What the hell are you doing? Grant didn't answer. He didn't blink. He didn't breathe right. And then he dropped the shiv, stumbled backward, collapsed, unconscious. Cliff scrambled away, terrified. The yard erupted in chaos. Guards rushed over. Inmates scattered. Whistles shrieked. Orders screamed. But Isaiah simply continued walking along the fence like nothing had happened. Marcus knew what he had just witnessed. Not magic. Not coincidence. A maneuver. A tactic. A psychological break executed with surgical precision. Vipers didn't attack you directly. They made your enemies destroy themselves. Later, back in Block B, the panic had not faded. Roach paced. Boss, what the hell happened out there? Grant just dropped. Ledger whisper yelled, You saw that, right? Dude looked hypnotized. Or drugged. Or, I don't know, possessed. Marcus sat on the edge of his bunk, head in his hands. He warned him, Marcus muttered. Isaiah warned him. Who? Roach demanded. Marcus looked at Isaiah across the block. He's not just a viper, Marcus said. He's something worse. Roach blinked. Worse than a viper? Boss, what the hell is worse than a... Marcus's voice trembled. A viper handler. Ledger froze. But those ain't real. Marcus shook his head. They're real. They're the ones who train vipers. They're the ones vipers feared. Roach stepped back. You telling me that quiet dude trained killers? Marcus looked up, eyes dark with certainty. I'm saying Cliff touched the wrong man, and the universe corrected it. Ledger whispered. Where's Cliff now? Marcus swallowed. Gone. Gone where? Roach asked. Marcus didn't look up. No one knows. He disappeared after lockdown. His bunk empty. No struggle. No noise. The block went silent. Everyone listened. Everyone understood. Isaiah Cole had given Cliff a warning. Cliff didn't listen. And now Cliff wasn't here. Marcus Kane was not the type of man who apologized. He threatened. He commanded. He punished. But apologize? That wasn't in his vocabulary. Yet for the first time since he became the most feared gang leader in Stone Ridge, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. A sense of obligation. Because after Cliff vanished, no noise, no struggle, no trace, Marcus knew one thing for certain. Isaiah Cole wasn't an inmate. He wasn't a nobody. He wasn't a ghost story. He was the kind of man people wrote ghost stories about. Marcus told Roach and Ledger to stay put. Nobody moves. Nobody talks to him. Nobody even looks at him wrong. Roach gulped. What if he looks at us wrong? Then you pray, Marcus muttered. He walked out of the cell, heart pounding a rhythm that didn't belong in a body like his. He wasn't scared of shanks or fists or even prison politics. He'd survived all of it. But Isaiah Cole wasn't any of those things. Isaiah was a different category. Marcus approached Isaiah's cell slowly. Isaiah was sitting cross-legged on the floor, back straight, hands resting lightly on his knees. His eyes were half closed, staring at nothing and everything at once. He didn't look up when Marcus arrived. Marcus cleared his throat. Hey! Silence. Marcus glanced around. No guards, no inmates close enough to hear. Look. About yesterday, Marcus exhaled. I didn't know. I didn't realize who you were. Isaiah didn't respond. Marcus shifted anxiously, his throat tight. I didn't mean to disrespect you, or test you, or whatever I did. Isaiah blinked once. Marcus swallowed. I didn't order Cliff to mess with you. He was stupid. He acted alone. Still nothing. Marcus felt sweat forming under his collar. I'm just clearing the air, I guess. Finally, Isaiah moved. He raised his head. Slow, deliberate, precise. Eyes meeting Marcus's with the calm weight of a man who had nothing left to prove. Isaiah studied him. Not with hostility, not with amusement, but with an unsettling neutrality, as if Marcus was a student giving the wrong answer to a question he didn't understand. You think I care about Cliff? Isaiah asked quietly. Marcus froze. The voice was calm, low, steady, and sharper than a blade. No, Marcus said softly. I figured you didn't. Then why are you here? Isaiah asked. Marcus tightened his jaw to show respect. Isaiah nodded once. Good. Marcus slowly exhaled, in relief, in confusion, in something between the two. Then Isaiah added, almost as an afterthought, but it's too late for that. Marcus's blood ran cold. W, what do you mean? Isaiah stood, not fast, not threatening, but with a presence that pressed on Marcus's lungs like weight. Isaiah stepped closer to the cell door until he and Marcus stood only inches apart. Do you know, Isaiah said quietly, what kind of men come looking for someone like me? Marcus shook his head. Isaiah's voice lowered. The kind who don't ask questions. Marcus's breath hitched. You saying someone's coming here? To the prison? Isaiah didn't blink. Someone's been coming for months. Marcus stared. For you? No. Isaiah whispered. For anyone near me. Marcus took a step back. Hold up, why? Why would someone come after people near you? Isaiah leaned forward slightly. And for the first time, Marcus saw something behind Isaiah's calm. Guilt. They're not after you, Isaiah said. They're after what I left behind. A chill crawled up Marcus's spine. What did you leave behind? Isaiah didn't answer immediately. Instead, he rolled up his sleeve slowly, revealing the geometric tattoo that had started this entire spiral. Black, sharp, perfect. But Marcus noticed something he hadn't before. The tattoo wasn't just a symbol. It had been scarred, burned. The ink lines were jagged, slightly warped. Marcus took a step closer. You tried to remove it? Isaiah nodded. I tried to erase that part of me. Marcus whispered. Why? Isaiah finally met his eyes fully. Because I was the one who trained the vipers, Isaiah said. The men you're scared of? I made them what they are. Marcus's knees nearly buckled. And when I left, Isaiah continued, I didn't leave quietly. I walked away with knowledge no one in that world is allowed to keep. Marcus backed up further, breath shaky. So they're coming for you? Isaiah shook his head. They're already here. Marcus felt the floor tilt underneath him. Before he could speak, the block alarm blared. A long, sharp siren. Not the kind used for fights. Not the kind used for lockdowns. This was the alarm used only for one thing. Unauthorized breach. Roach and Ledger rushed out of their cells. Boss, what's going on? Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to, because the guard tower lights flickered. The cameras whined. The electric doors buzzed. And every inmate in block befroze at the same moment. Someone had cut power to the external electric grid. Isaiah stepped away from the bars calmly. Marcus whispered, Who the hell is out there? Isaiah looked toward the block entrance and said, Men I trained. Men who think I betrayed them. Men who don't stop until they finish the job. Roach stammered. You're saying? Isaiah nodded slowly. The vipers have entered the prison. Marcus felt his heart drop. The room vibrated with a distant thud of metal. Not from inside. From outside. A breach. A breach done quietly. Professionally. Isaiah sat back down on his bunk, the calm returning to his face. Marcus backed up, unable to look away. Isaiah whispered, You want to know who I am? He lifted his wrist, showed the tattoo, the scarred edges, the burn marks. Then he looked Marcus dead in the eyes. I didn't just train them. His voice dropped to a whisper that chilled the block. I led them. The blood drained from Marcus's face. And in the silence that followed, the thud at the prison gate echoed again, louder, Closer. Coming for him. Coming for anyone near him. Coming inside Stone Ridge. The siren screamed through Stone Ridge like a knife dragged over metal. The kind of alarm no inmate ever hoped to hear. Not even the violent ones. Not even the gang leaders. This wasn't an inmate fight. This wasn't a riot. This wasn't a guard assault. This was something else. Something worse. The lights flickered again, once, twice. Then the entire block went dim, running on emergency strips that cast everything in a sickly red glow. The low hum of backup generators filled the air like an uneasy heartbeat. Roach pressed himself against the bars. Why are the lights red? What the hell is happening? Ledger shook his head violently. This ain't normal, boss. Emergency power doesn't just cut on unless someone bypassed the main grid. Marcus didn't respond. He couldn't, because he was staring at Isaiah Cole, the quiet man sitting in the middle of the chaos like he was meditating inside a hurricane, a man whose past had just walked into the prison. Isaiah sat on the edge of his bunk, elbows resting on his knees, fingers interlaced. His expression did not shift. His breath did not change. He looked like he had been waiting for this moment since the day he walked into Stone Ridge Penitentiary. Marcus took a staggering step toward his cell bars. How many? Isaiah didn't look up. 4. Roach blinked fast. For what? Isaiah finally lifted his gaze. Vipers. The word alone made the air in the block tighten. Ledger's knees buckled. But that's impossible. How do 4 men get inside a maximum security prison? How do they bypass guards? Cameras? Everything. They don't bypass, Isaiah said quietly. They walk past. Roach shook his head furiously. What does that even mean? Isaiah answered simply. They're wearing uniforms. Marcus felt the blood drain from his entire body. You're telling me, Marcus whispered, that they infiltrated the guard staff? Isaiah nodded, not proudly, not boastfully, but with the heaviness of a man living in a nightmare of his own creation. That's why the grid went out, Isaiah said. They needed the cameras down so the switch could be made. They needed the power cut so the real guards couldn't seal the doors. Marcus grabbed the bars so hard his knuckles turned white. They're coming here, aren't they? Isaiah held Marcus's gaze. They're coming for anyone who speaks to me, anyone who tries to protect me, anyone who knows who I was. Roach stumbled back. Hell no, I didn't sign up for this. I'm not dying for no tattoo. Ledger whispered, voice shaking. Boss, we gotta run. Marcus turned. Run where? He barked. We're in a prison. Outside, something slammed into the lower gate. A dull, heavy thud, metal bending under force. Another slam, then another, rhythmic, deliberate, not chaotic, like an inmate riot. This was tactical, planned. Roach backed into the wall. Somebody call the guards. Call the warden. Somebody do something. Ledger swallowed. The guards a problem. The weight of the revelation crushed the block. Then, a sound cut through the air, a faint buzzing, like a device powering on. Isaiah breathed out slowly. They're using comms. Marcus turned to him. To talk to who? Isaiah looked toward the hallway. To each other. The buzzing stopped. Silence stretched through the block. Even the inmates who usually laughed at chaos pressed themselves against the walls. Every man in block befelt something primal rising from the pit of his stomach, an instinct older than fear. Something was hunting them. Then, clang, the first gate gave way. Screams echoed down the hallway. Boots stamped. Keys rattled. Metal screeched. And then, footsteps. Soft, steady, perfectly synchronized. Marcus whispered. No, not like this. Not here. Isaiah stood, not slowly, not quickly, just enough to assert presence. He walked to the bars of his cell and placed 2 fingers on the steel. They're coming to kill me, Isaiah said, but not before they clear the block. Marcus's eyes widened. Why? Why us? Loose ends, Isaiah whispered. You saw the mark. You asked questions. You opened the file. Marcus staggered back as if struck. Roach's voice cracked. Boss, we dead. Isaiah didn't deny it. Then, from down the hallway, a figure appeared in the red-lit corridor. A guard uniform. Clean, proper, professional. But the walk? Not a guard's walk. Quiet, smooth, balanced. A predator's stride. More figures emerged behind him. For men. For uniforms. Faces blank. Eyes sharp. Motionless as shadows. Marcus clamped a hand over his mouth. They look like normal guards. No, Isaiah said softly. They look like me. The group stopped at the end of Block B, standing perfectly still, not speaking, not breathing loudly, just waiting. Roach whimpered. Why aren't they moving? Isaiah answered. They're waiting for me to step out. You gonna do it? Marcus asked. Isaiah exhaled. Yes. Marcus grabbed the bars of Isaiah's cell. You step out there, you're dead. Isaiah looked at him for a moment, distant, almost sad. Marcus. Isaiah said, they're here because of me. Marcus shook his head. Nah, man, I ain't letting you go out there alone. Isaiah tilted his head slightly. You don't have a choice. Another slam echoed down the hallway. A signal. The Vipers moved forward, silent, synchronized, lethal. Isaiah stepped back into the center of his cell. Marcus, he said quietly. Marcus turned, breath tight. Isaiah looked him dead in the eyes. What you saw in my file, that wasn't the whole truth. Marcus blinked. What do you mean? Isaiah breathed out slowly. I didn't just train the Vipers. Marcus frowned. You told me that already. Isaiah shook his head. I trained them. His voice dropped. Because I was their commanding officer. The hallway lights buzzed violently. The Vipers stepped closer. 25 feet. 20 feet. 15 feet. Isaiah clenched his fists. Marcus froze. You led them? Marcus whispered. Led the Vipers? Isaiah nodded. And they're here, Isaiah said, because their commander went rogue. Marcus swallowed. Rogue how? Isaiah looked straight ahead. Because I refused to kill a child. The red lights flickered again, and the Vipers reached the bars of Block B. All four sets of eyes locked onto Isaiah. No mercy, no anger, no emotion, only one mission. Marcus stepped back. God help us. Isaiah whispered. No. He stepped toward the bars. They're here for me. The Vipers moved like a sentence being read aloud, clear, measured, without hesitation. They filed into Block B as if they belonged there, as if their boots had walked those halls 100 times. The uniforms made guards look like props. The men inside them held themselves like predators who'd been taught to wait for the kill, to let the room tell them where to place their weight. A hush swallowed the block. Even the rats in the pipes seemed to stop. Conversations died mid-breath. Cups dropped with a dull clink and were forgotten. Men who had blustered their whole lives now clutched their bedsheets like talismans. Marcus watched them come, every muscle taut as wire. Roach and Ledger flanked him. Faces drained of bravado. They wanted power and respect. Now they had something else entirely, raw, naked fear. The lead Viper was a tall man with a shaved head and a face. So ordinary it felt like a lie. Ordinary faces were the most dangerous kind, Marcus thought, because ordinary doesn't get hunted. He carried himself like the center of a storm, still inevitable. He stopped 5 paces from the bars and looked at Isaiah with the cold precision of someone watching a clock. Isaiah Cole, he said, voice flat as concrete. You were due. It was the first name anyone had dared to speak out loud in Block B since Isaiah had arrived. The words fell like a detonation. Heads snapped up. Even the guards held their breath. Isaiah met the voice and didn't flinch. He stood and stepped forward inside his cell until he was only a hand's width from the steel. The proximity didn't make him blink. It made him smaller in the eyes of the block, but somehow more dangerous. The room felt crowded with history. You brought uniforms, Isaiah said quietly. You always did. The lead Viper's mouth twitched with something like a memory. Rules change, he said. Orders remain. Marcus's throat tightened. You come into my block and you... His words collapsed. There were men out there in those uniforms who had killed without leaving a print. He had no leverage left to bargain with. The viper second stopped and looked directly at Marcus with clinical curiosity, as if cataloging an insect. "You're Marcus Kane," he said pleasantly. "We remember your name." It wasn't a compliment. Roach swore under his breath. Ledger's hand found a shank hidden under a mattress and then froze. The thought of using it felt childish now, like trying to fight lightning with a rock. The lead viper tilted his head, eyes scanning. "We're not here for you," he said. "We're here for him, and for anyone who touches him." A low murmur pulsed through the block like a shiver. Men guessed at the meaning. Snitches, protectors, those who'd ask questions. Marcus looked over faces. Roach, Ledger, Bruno in the corner, a dozen others, and knew the list had been written long before he'd ever seen Isaiah's tattoo. "Evacuate the perimeter." The viper in charge ordered quietly into a sleeve mic. There was a precise efficiency to it. One man to the left moved. A second slid toward the cell block entrance. Guards on duty were subtly browbeaten into stepping aside. The illusion shattered. These weren't guards turned killers. They were professionals able to walk into a prison and turn roles into props. Isaiah watched the choreography the way a conductor watches an orchestra. "Do it clean," he murmured. "No screams. Leave no marks." One of the vipers glanced at him with something like sorrow. "You wanted a clean job," he said. "You gave us a mess." "So you became a mess," Isaiah replied. There was no regret in his voice, no apology, only the tired resignation of a man who knew the shape his life had taken. Suddenly, the first man on the viper's list, an inmate who'd been seen asking Isaiah a question, bolted from his bunk at the far end of the block. He ran with the panicked speed of a deer in a trap. The moment he sprinted, two vipers moved with the economy of a thought. One of them slipped impossibly between cells, past curtains and bodies, and intercepted the man before he reached the door. The man's eyes went wide with a terror that had nothing to do with pain and everything to do with the quickness of fate. He dropped, gasping, the breath snapping from his chest as if someone had pulled a cord. The block convulsed. Men tried to rise but found their muscles heavy. A silence more absolute than any they'd known settled like dust. Marcus lunged forward as if to pull the man free, but a viper's hand caught him on the shoulder with the gentleness of a hand on a puppeteer's string. Not rough, not cruel, firm, deliberate. Marcus felt himself held still, impotent. "Don't," the viper said softly. "Observe." He watched helpless as the man on the floor began to tremble, and then his eyes rolled up, his body curled inward like a cord being pulled tight. No blood, no marks, just a cessation like a candle being snuffed. A viper pulled out a small device, no bigger than a phone, and held it near the fallen man's temple. A few pulses of light blinked. The inmate's chest gave one slow heave, then relaxed. A breath later, and he was gone, lifeless, as if sleep had taken him forever. No blunt force trauma, no visible wound, just a human stopped mid-breath. There was a collective intake of air, like a tidal wave. Men tasted iron in their mouths. The vipers worked like medics cleaning up. Quick, memorized motions, efficient and clinical. Isaiah watched each movement, the same way a man watches the weather he helped make. "Leave him," the lead viper instructed Marcus, voice low. "We will remove our own." Two vipers slipped through the doors and into the corridor, moving with the furtive authority of those owed silence. They came back minutes later carrying the body like an object, tightly bound, unresisting, as if it had been slept into a coat. They walked out without looking at anyone. Marcus's knees bent, and he would have fallen if Roach hadn't grabbed him. Ledger mouthed soundlessly, "What the hell?" Isaiah's eyes never left the doorway. "They took him," he said simply. What are you doing?" Marcus rasped. "You could have stopped them. Why didn't you?" Isaiah put a finger to his lips. "For every man I let live who knows me, there's a room someone else will empty," Isaiah said quietly. "I choose which rooms are sacrificed. I did not get to save them all." Marcus's hands clenched until his nails dug crescents into his palms. "You mean to say—" Isaiah looked at him with a look that was equal parts command and confession. "I made them lethal. I trained men to obey without second thought. I gave them a sentence mark and a method. I walked away and left a wound. They come to finish the lesson, I started. A cry rose from the block, low and long and hopeless. Not for the man who had just been taken, but for the realization that nothing in Stone Ridge would ever be the same. Outside, beyond the barred windows, the sirens began to die down. Inside, a new alarm rose, an animal one, the kind you don't hear with your ears but feel with your marrow. Men who had once prided themselves on surviving would now have to choose between silence and movement, between living for themselves or for the man who had built the monster that had come for him. Isaiah stepped back to his bunk as if returning from a long walk. Marcus watched him and understood something ugly. They had invited a storm into their house, and the storm had returned with the address written clearly on its hands. He realized with a cold clarity that there were debts you could never pay in prison currency, and as the vipers melted away with their quiet burden, Blockby discovered a harsher ledger. The list had begun, one name at a time. The body was gone. The vipers had vanished, and yet the terror they left behind stayed, like smoke trapped in the walls. Hours passed, but Blockby never returned to normal. No chatter, no card games, no clinking weights. Even the guards walked differently, shoulders stiff, eyes sharp, hands close to radios they knew wouldn't save them. Marcus sat on his bunk, elbows on his knees, staring at the concrete floor that suddenly felt thinner than paper. Roach and Ledger sat across from him, like scared recruits, waiting for orders from a commander who no longer believed in war. "Boss," Roach whispered, "we can't stay here." Marcus lifted his head slowly. "Where you gonna go? There ain't a corner. In this place we can hide from them." Ledger's legs wouldn't stop shaking. "Maybe we talk to the warden. Maybe he calls the state. The feds. Someone." Marcus chuckled darkly. "You think help's coming? You think anyone's gonna storm in here and fight them?" He pointed toward Isaiah's cell. "Nah, they'll let this place burn before they get in the way of vipers." Ledger swallowed. "So what? We just wait until they come back." Marcus didn't answer, because he didn't know. Instead, his gaze drifted to cell 214. Isaiah sat in silence, spine straight, hands folded in his lap, not meditating, not resting, just thinking. The same calm, the same control, the same sense that the chaos didn't belong to him. Marcus stared. He ain't scared. Roach followed his gaze. "Who? The monk." "He's not a monk," Marcus muttered. "Monks don't train assassins." Even Ledger's shaky voice managed a weak. "So what's he doing now?" Marcus watched Isaiah's breathing. Slow, deep, counting something only he understood. "He's planning," Marcus whispered. "He's calculating." Roach lifted an eyebrow. "Calculating what?" Marcus shook his head. "That's the part that scares me." The second sign something was about to happen came from the guards. Officer Crane, usually loud, arrogant, more bark than bite, walked into block with silence that didn't belong to him. His steps were too careful, his eyes too alert. The inmates watched him. Crane scanned the tiers. Slow, measured, then his gaze locked onto Isaiah. Something flickered. Recognition. Fear. Or worse. Obedience. Marcus stiffened. "Oh, hell no." Crane walked toward Isaiah's cell. Not with swagger. Not with authority. With purpose. Controlled. Precise. Ledger whispered. "Boss, he's moving like them." Marcus clenched his jaw. "He's not moving like them. He's one of them." Roach stumbled back. "They got a guard on the inside?" "No," Marcus hissed. They turned one. Crane reached Isaiah's cell and stopped. "Cole," he said quietly. Too quietly. Isaiah opened his eyes. "Crane," he replied, equally calm. Crane inhaled sharply, like someone who hadn't breathed in minutes. "They're coming back tonight." Roach's jaw dropped. Ledger's breath caught. Marcus rose slowly from his bunk. "How the hell do you know?" Crane didn't look at Marcus. Didn't acknowledge him at all. His eyes stayed fixed on Isaiah. They gave the signal. Crane said, 2 hours ago. East wing. Same pattern as before." Isaiah nodded once. "How many?" "3, Crane replied. "But there's a 4th waiting outside." Marcus rubbed his temples. "Why are you telling him this?" Crane finally turned to Marcus, but his gaze was wrong. Expression flat, breathing steady, stance rigid. He wasn't acting like Crane. He was reciting something he'd been instructed to say. Because, Crane said slowly, the message was meant for him. Isaiah stood. Marcus and his men backed up instantly. Isaiah, Marcus whispered, what did you do to him? Isaiah stepped toward the bars. I didn't do anything. They got to him long before I stepped foot in this prison. Crane nodded. I was activated when you entered. The room froze. Every spine stiffened. Activated? Marcus shook his head violently. Activated? Like a robot? Isaiah looked at Crane with a sorrow that didn't match the fear swirling around the block. You were always good with obedience, Isaiah said softly. I told them not to recruit you. You were too desperate to belong. Crane flinched at those words. The first sign of emotion. Shame. Pain. Memory. I didn't want to serve them anymore, Crane whispered. But they told me if I didn't obey, they'd kill my sister. Isaiah's jaw tightened. Marcus whispered, Jesus? Crane stepped close to the bars. They're coming tonight, he repeated. And they have orders. Isaiah answered, to kill me. Crane shook his head. To kill everyone on this block. Roach cursed loudly. Ledger stumbled back until he hit the wall. Crane's breath wavered. I don't want to do this anymore, Isaiah. I don't want to be like them. I don't want to. Isaiah's voice softened. I know. Crane pressed his forehead to the bars. You left us. You left me. Why did you leave? Isaiah closed his eyes for a moment, a single moment, before answering. Because they ordered me to kill a child, he said. And I refused. That refusal made all of you prisoners. Crane trembled. We can still stop them, right? Isaiah inhaled deeply, a slow, painful breath. Maybe. Tell me what to do, Crane pleaded. Please, give me a command. Like before. Isaiah stepped back. No. Crane's expression cracked. Why? Isaiah whispered. Because I'm not your commander anymore. Crane dropped to his knees, hands shaking. Then what do I do? Isaiah looked at him with a quiet heaviness. You run, he said. Run as far as you can. Crane blinked. Run? From them? Isaiah nodded. It's your only chance. Crane swallowed. Will you run too? Isaiah shook his head. No. Crane's voice broke. They'll kill you. Maybe, Isaiah said, but not before I kill the men coming for Block B. Marcus felt his stomach flip. You gonna fight them? All four. Isaiah's gaze sharpened, colder than any man Marcus had ever seen. Yes. Roach sputtered. Bro, what? How? Isaiah turned to Marcus. In this block, he said, I am the only man who knows how they move. He cracked his knuckles, a sound that echoed like thunder in a quiet cell. And tonight, Isaiah continued, I will show them why their commander is not dead. Crane rose shakily to his feet. What do I tell them? He whispered. Isaiah looked him dead in the eyes. Tell them, he said, voice lower than a growl, that I remember every one of their weaknesses. Crane's eyes widened. And tell them, Isaiah added, that I trained them to fail. Marcus froze. What does that mean? He whispered. Isaiah stepped back into his cell. It means, he said, tonight won't be a hunt. A beat of silence. Isaiah's voice dropped into something primal. It'll be a lesson. Night arrived like an accusation. Thick, sudden, and total. The emergency lights bled a bruise red across concrete and steel. Every man in Block B could feel it. The air itself had turned sharp, expectation cutting like glass. Conversations had died hours ago. Now only the small sound of the block remained. The distant drip of water, the rustle of blankets, the muffled snore of a man pretending to sleep. All the world had narrowed to the waiting. Isaiah sat on his bunk with the same perfect stillness he had worn since intake. He had no weapons, no allies visible, no canvas of bravado to hide behind. He had only old lessons and a body that still knew how to move with the precision of a surgeon's hand. Around him, men held their breaths like holding pennies in cupped palms. something valuable they were terrified to lose. From the outer gate, the Vipers arrived not in violence, but like professionals arriving for a funeral. The display of uniformed guards moving through locked doors had ceased to startle. Fear had graduated to a numb, clinical observation. The four men split like surgical teams, each assuming positions at sealed corridors, watch cameras, and controlled sightlines. It was choreography designed to prevent surprises, except for one surprise they hadn't expected. Isaiah Cole. The first contact happened in the south wing, where a Viper moved to clear a cluster of cells. He walked with professional cadence, methodical, economical. He expected obedience from the prison's men, even fear. He did not expect a silhouette to appear in an open doorway and vanish like a breath. One of the Vipers reached the corner where Isaiah had been spotted earlier. He saw nothing at first, just a shadow, and then the world changed. A hand closed on the Viper's throat with a pressure that belonged in nightmares. No scream, no sound, just a careful, clinical squeeze. The man's eyes widened in perfect shock. He groped for the attacker with his free hand and could not find him. He staggered and fell as if the air itself had betrayed him. The other Vipers trained their weapons and frantically swept the corridor. No visible attacker, no footprints. Only that same shadow retreating into stone. The radio crackled. Contact. Contact south wing. Static swallowed half the words. Men ran with lasers dancing across the walls. But each suite found the same absence, as if the attacker had been a ghost that could slip in and out of sight. In the control tower, alarms screamed and lights flashed, but cameras showed only dark shapes and the same for men moving like ghosts. The Vipers breathed through comms, calm and professional, reporting trivialities because precision is a mask for killers. Back in Block B, the inmates huddled close to their stacked bunks. Marcus's hands were knuckles white on the railing. Roach's lip trembled. Crane, who had begged Isaiah for a plan, leaned against the wall like a man trying to keep himself from falling apart. They had expected an invasion. They had expected slaughter. What they had not expected was to feel the house itself change sides. Then the second Viper was taken, not by force, but by misdirection. He pursued a scream down a corridor, only to step into a room where every camera angle was wrong, and the lights turned off momentarily, flickering out in a timed interruption Isaiah had orchestrated earlier. When the glow returned, the Viper was on his knees, hands pressed to his head, eyes glazed with confusion and pain. He whispered a name, one of the trainees he once commanded, and then became still. That was all it took. The trained killers had been taught to respond to stimuli, to obey commands engraved into muscle memory. Isaiah turned that training back on them. Muscle memory redirected, reflexes hijacked by exactly the signals he knew would break them. The Vipers are professionals for a reason. They controlled scenes, they isolated threats, they closed exits. But that professionalism depended on predictable responses. Isaiah had written those responses into them. Tonight, he ripped out the page and burned it. He used the prison's rhythms to create blind spots. He used routine to fold time, and he used their own lessons against them, where they expected chaos. He offered choreography, where they expected victims. He gave them theory. From a vantage in the corner, Crane watched the men he'd once obeyed fall into the traps of his former commander. Shame and relief warred on his face. He could have joined them. He could have tried to help. Instead, he stood rooted, because Isaiah had told him to run. And because sometimes survival is not courage, but obedience to a better command. The third Viper made the fatal mistake of trying to corral a cluster of inmates into submission. He barked an order, a ritual cadence meant to reduce panic. Freeze, hands up, knees down. But his voice was the voice of the men Isaiah had trained. Isaiah counted the cadence with subtle variation, an inflection like a metronome shifted by a half-beat, and entire muscles in the Viper's body stopped. He moved jerkily, then slumped as if a hand had tucked his spine away. When the men who'd trained under him found that their commander's voice no longer meant safety, but danger, they faltered. Fear flooded their faces. They were designed to follow. Tonight, following meant being led into death. It happened so fast that men had no time to think. The Vipers fell like toppled statues, seized by reflexes that had been overwritten and then short-circuited. It was clinical, cold, Without flourish, Isaiah watched with steady gaze that betrayed only a tired resolve. Marcus couldn't stand it anymore. He lunged at the bars and screamed, "Stop! Stop! What are you doing? This ain't." Isaiah turned his head toward Marcus and said, as if reading from a ledger, "I taught them to obey on instinct. Obedience without conscience makes a weapon. I am taking the conscience away." Marcus cursed. "You're killing them." Isaiah's voice was flat. "I am unmaking what I built." A viper lay motionless where he had been. Another, later, was being hauled away, alive but broken, muttering disconnected names and sobbing for a childhood that criminal armies had stolen from him. The men were not all dead. Some were stripped of purpose, shuffled into shells, left to wander the corridors like people who had woken up from anesthesia to find their lives empty. Others, forced into paralysis, were quietly removed by the men watching from the shadows, taken not to die violently, but to be erased gently, like a pencil rubbed clean so the line never existed. The lesson was surgical. It didn't take every viper. It took enough. Isaiah didn't move like a man who enjoyed power. He moved like a man who had no choice but to finish an old accounting. The block watched him do it. The inmates who'd once mocked him, the guards who had feared him, the men who had tried to own him. And they learned something new. The man they had thought meek was not meek at all. When the final echo faded and the night settled back into a dim hush, only 4 vipers remained where before there had been 4 intent killers. 2 were utterly still, removed. 1 was broken and incoherent. 1, the leader, was left on his knees in a yard, hands trembling, eyes full of a realization that life has a price when you teach men to kill without question. Isaiah walked back to his bunk. He sat down. He folded his hands as if folding the same shirt he'd worn for 100 missions. Marcus, Roach, Crane, men who had once held power in the block, looked at him with new language in their faces. Fear folded into awe. Contempt folded into something like gratitude. Hatred folded into understanding. Isaiah met Marcus's gaze and said softly, without flourish, "Now you know." Marcus's voice broke. "Know what? That training is a debt." Isaiah replied, "I repaid part of mine tonight." Outside, far beyond the razor wire and the flashing lights, distant sirens raised their heads, as if the world beyond had noticed the tremor. Inside Block B, men who had argued over petty crowns now argued with themselves about survival and morality. Some whispered thanks quietly to Isaiah. Others spat into the dirt out of horror. None of them slept easily. The lesson had been delivered, and the ledger, for now, had been balanced. Morning didn't come gently to Stone Ridge. It didn't spill sunlight across concrete or soften the edges of the night. Morning crashed in. Sirens blared across the compound. Guards scrambled like panicked ants. Radio shrieked half-formed reports, and the entire facility pulsed with tension, so thick you could feel it like humidity. Block B wasn't waking up. It was bracing. Men who normally strutted to breakfast walked like they were heading into a funeral. No laughter, no arguments, only silence, heavy, suffocating, shared. Word had already spread. The vipers came last night. Some left, some didn't. And somehow, the man they came for, the man they feared, was still alive. Marcus Kane hadn't slept at all. Not 1 second. He sat on his bunk staring at Isaiah, as if watching him might reveal answers he didn't want to ask for. Roach sat cross-legged on the floor, muttering prayers he didn't believe in. Ledger hadn't moved from the corner, arms wrapped around his knees, trying to make himself smaller. Even Crane, who once barked orders and strutted like a small king, now stood quietly with his head lowered as if awaiting judgment. Isaiah sat on his bunk in a posture, so calm it felt like defiance. The block was different now. There were no loud men left, only witnesses. The quiet stretched so long it became a question. Finally, Marcus stepped forward. "Isaiah," he said, voice low, "what happens now?" Isaiah didn't answer at first. He lifted his head slightly, eyes carrying exhaustion deeper than sleep, like he'd lived 3 lifetimes in one night. "Now," Isaiah said softly, "they send the last one." Marcus frowned. "Last one?" Isaiah nodded. "The last viper they trained under me. The most loyal. The most dangerous." Roach's voice cracked. More dangerous than those four? Isaiah's gaze hardened. Yes, Ledger whispered. What's he coming for? Isaiah answered without emotion. For me, for the truth, for the body count. Marcus swallowed. When? Isaiah looked toward the entrance of Block B. When he decides I've reflected long enough. Roach turned pale. So he's already? A sound echoed from down the corridor. A single metallic click. Not a weapon. Not a key. A boot heel. One step. Then another. Slow. Deliberate. Measured. Isaiah stood. No tension. No fear. Just readiness. The entire block froze as a shadow stretched across the concrete floor. A tall figure entered with quiet authority of a man who didn't need to be loud to own space. He wore no guard uniform, no inmate jumpsuit, just a long black coat that brushed against his boots with each step. His head was shaved clean. His face was unreadable. His eyes, cold, intelligent, and sharp, locked straight on Isaiah. The block didn't breathe. Isaiah exhaled softly. Leon. Marcus felt the name like a punch. You know him? Isaiah nodded once. He was my second. Leon stepped forward. Marcus couldn't help himself. You the last one? The final viper? Leon didn't even glance at him. He only looked at Isaiah. You trained us to kill clean, Leon said quietly. Last night was sloppy. Isaiah held his gaze. Last night wasn't for killing. Leon's jaw tightened. That's not what the council thinks. And since when have you cared what they think? Isaiah asked, a flicker in Leon's eyes. Anger or pain, Marcus couldn't tell. Leon stepped closer until he was only a few feet from Isaiah's cell. You broke protocol, Leon said. You walked away. You made us look weak. Isaiah's voice softened. I didn't walk away from the mission. I walked away from the monster we created. Leon's nostrils flared. We create monsters so others don't have to. Isaiah shook his head. We became the monsters. Marcus whispered. They're like two gods talking. No one shushed him. No one blinked. Leon leaned into the bars. The council sent me to finish what the others couldn't. Isaiah didn't blink. I know. But, Leon continued, I didn't come here for them. Isaiah's eyes sharpened. Then why? Leon's voice dropped. For the truth. Isaiah's expression changed for the first time. Something like regret. Leon continued. Tell me, Isaiah, did you betray us? Isaiah answered immediately. No. Did you expose us? No. Did you run because you were afraid? No. Marcus whispered. Then why'd he leave? Leon stared at Isaiah, voice trembling with a rage he'd been holding for years. Then why did you abandon me? The entire block froze. Not a guard spoke. Not an inmate made a sound. It was as if Stone Ridge itself paused. Isaiah's face softened. The council ordered me to kill a child. You weren't there. You didn't see the look on her face. You didn't see her hold her mother's hand. You didn't hear what she asked me. Leon's breath hitched. What? She asked. Isaiah whispered, Are you the good guy? A single tear rolled down Leon's cheek. Silent, quick, immediately wiped away. The council doesn't want good guys, Isaiah continued. They want tools. Leon whispered, and I stayed. I stayed believing you'd return, that you had a plan, that you didn't forget about me. Isaiah stepped closer to the bars. I never forgot you, Leon. Leon exhaled a shuddering breath. Then why did you vanish and leave me to them? Isaiah's voice broke. Because if I stayed, I would have had to kill you next. Leon froze. And in that stillness, everything made sense. Leon wasn't here to kill him. Leon wasn't here to complete a mission. Leon wasn't even here for revenge. Leon was here for closure, for an answer, for a wound that had never healed. Isaiah reached through the bars and placed a hand on Leon's shoulder. Leon didn't pull away. Isaiah whispered, I left so you could live the part of you they didn't break. Leon's eyes closed. A moment passed, heavy, slow, sacred. Then Leon whispered, They're coming for me next. Isaiah nodded. I know. Leon opened his eyes. Then make it look like you killed me. Marcus stumbled. What? Roach gagged on his own breath. Ledger dropped to his knees. Leon turned to Block, voice calm. You all saw it. You all heard it. I came to finish him. He resisted. He killed me. That's the message. Marcus stared. You're insane. Leon smiled faintly. I'd rather die free in the world than live as their weapon. Isaiah looked heartbroken. Leon squeezed Isaiah's hand. This is the only way you live long enough to finish what you started. Isaiah closed his eyes. Then he moved. A flash of motion. A controlled strike. A perfect takedown. Leon fell gracefully, like a man surrendering to gravity with purpose. Isaiah lowered him gently. Leon whispered, Thank you, Commander. Then he stopped breathing. Isaiah placed Leon's body on the concrete floor with reverence only a brother deserves. The block was silent, utterly silent. Marcus's voice cracked. Wow, what now? Isaiah rose slowly. Then he looked at Marcus, not with threat, not with coldness, but with the resolve of a man reborn. Now, Isaiah said, I finished what I should have finished years ago. Marcus swallowed, which is... Isaiah stepped forward as alarms blared again, this time from outside the prison, not inside. He whispered, I'm going to burn the council to the ground. The lights flickered. A helicopter spotlight swept across the yard. Men shouted. Dogs barked. The prison walls shook. Isaiah smiled faintly. Block B, he said, you've just survived history. He turned away. And now you're part of a war bigger than prison. The door behind the block blew open, and Isaiah Cole walked toward it, toward the world, toward the past, toward the war he had created.